Oh, great.
All right, so we are now officially recording, and
I am
um,
currently.
we're going to go ahead and mute everyone who is there. And then Trusty Mats, once it is that we get ready for you to start, I'm going to unmute you because we need to turn it off to make sure we don't get the background noise. So we have that. So again, greatest of evenings to everyone who is joining. This is the first Wednesday flat tax property flat property tax initiative call that we do every first and third Wednesday. We are incredibly grateful for everybody who has joined. We're looking forward to lots more people joining. We're going to be getting started in 1 minute, 60 seconds, but we're letting as many people enter in as possible. I have set it where it's on mute. If you have questions or concerns, go ahead and post those in the chat. We'll get those addressed. Trustee Mats is going to be kicking us off soon within the next 60 seconds. But for anybody who wants to make sure that something gets addressed, so be it. We want to let everybody know right now that this is being recorded because we upload it to YouTube. So the channel is Save the Southland on YouTube. And I'm going to go ahead and pull that up so that everybody can see it. Save the Southland on YouTube. So anybody who wants to watch back the videos, or anybody who says, oh, I want to talk about it with my friends and I want to show them, this is the page you can go to. So it's Save the Southland. There's 331 subscribers. Thank you to all of that. And then we have the videos. So for people who couldn't make it, we want to make sure that we have it available and the information is there. So again, thank you to everybody who has joined. This information is now being recorded and it's shared on YouTube, Save the Southland. And I am going to cede the floor to Trustee Cassandra Matz, who is doing incredible work and is going to welcome us all on tonight. So I'm going to stop the share. And Trustee Matz, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Attorney Reed. Good evening, everyone. As Attorney Reed said, I am Trustee Cassandra Matz. I served as trustee in Olympia Fields from 2017 until 21, but I'm forever advocating for the Southland as well as Olympia Fields. Right now, I'm in Peoria at the Illinois State Black Caucus, Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce conference right now. So I'm down here making sure that I talk to everyone who is in the same plight as we are. And I travel and I go everywhere to talk to legislators so that they can understand that we are hurting and we need their help. And this is why you guys are on the call tonight. It's going to take us to save us. Right now, it's about 20 something people on the call. We need 100 people on the call so that next time they bring 10 people back to the call. That's the only way that we're going to get out of this mess. That's the only way. And Attorney Reed, being our subject matter expert, who's spent thousands of hours studying what the problem is and came up with a viable solution, we need to definitely make sure that other people get on the call and get educated. So I thank you all for being on here tonight. As Attorney Reed said, everybody is muted. Put your questions in the chat. We're not going to stop until we answer everybody's question because we want to make sure that you are educated so we can mobilize. So back to you, Attorney Reed.
Excellent. Thank you, Trustee Matz, and greatest of evenings to everyone. We're going to launch in because we have a ton of information that we're going to be discussing. One of the things that I had the great fortune of learning from the last time we did this call and posted it on YouTube is that a lot of people had questions about how they can join the call. And because of that, the first thing that I'm going to share is the information. So for anybody who's watching this playback on YouTube and you're interested in joining this call for the third Wednesday, which is the next time that we're going to be on this call, the information for the Zoom is here. It's 811-3798-0476, which is the meeting ID, and the passcode is 094691. This is always the information. We keep the information always the same so that way, once you have it one time, it'll be the same for every time after. I want to stress and reiterate, we're here every first and every third Wednesday. Trustee Matz and I have been here where it's just the two of us, and we've been here now where we've gotten up to 50 people. We need this to get up to 5,000. because what the goal is to educate and mobilize. That's what this initiative is. We need to educate first, and then we need to mobilize. But until 50,000, 5 million people are educated on what the problem is, we can't mobilize. And more importantly, we can't convince our legislators to enact a solution that benefits us. And I'm going to talk about what that looks like. So I want to thank each and every one of you because it's starting to get the traction we need, but this has to be a consistent thing. We like to liken it to the civil rights movement. So for everybody who is familiar with the civil rights movement, that didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen in a month. It didn't happen in a year. Some estimates put it at 38 years that it took for it to happen. We don't want for this to take 38 years. So we got to get on top of it and work faster and harder. But it involves all of us being educated in the consistency. So thank you to everyone who came. The other thing that I learned is that a lot of people would like to watch the playback. And for the people who have church or they have work or they can't make it, a lot of them said, how can I watch the playback? How you can watch the playback is by going to the YouTube page of Save the Southland. This is what it looks like. Save the Southland. If you go to Save the Southland, you can watch the videos. This is going to now be the 4th video that's going to show up. The first session that we had posted on YouTube is now up to 2,000 views. We greatly appreciate everybody who's watched. We make these available for anybody who wants to watch the playback and couldn't make it. Or let's say you have questions that came up and you just want to review it. We welcome you to do that. So that's the second thing I wanted to bring up. The third thing that I want to bring up is that every single session, there's going to be new information. A lot of people say, well, I've heard this before, so why do I need to keep coming? You haven't. Today, we're going to talk about information that even if you've came for the last 4+ years that we've been doing this, you're going to get new information. And the reason why is because every week I'm researching this topic based on questions that came up from the last session. So once I go find the answers, I'm bringing that information back and I'm sharing it. So every single session, every first and third Wednesday, we're going to start with the new information. So anybody who says, I've heard this before, they're lying, because what I'm going to talk about today, we haven't talked about before because I didn't know it. So it's all brand new information, and all the new information is going to be at the beginning. So for somebody who has to run and can't stay for the whole hour, if you come at the beginning, you'll get the new information. And that leads us to what we're going to start with. So most people who are on this call are aware that our taxes are entirely too high. I live in the south suburbs. I have a property in Lansing, Illinois, and my taxes went from $7,000 last year to $13,000 this year. So I'm in the same boat as everybody. I know a lot of times people think those attorneys have all the special rules and stuff. We don't. And if I did, trust me, I'd take advantage, but I don't. So I'm in the same boat as most people on this call. The difference is that I understand why it is that our taxes went up. A lot of people think it's because of the assessor. That's wrong. It is not because of the assessor. It is because the state of Illinois is not contributing its fair share towards our public school education. That's the number one, and that's the sole reason why our taxes are the highest in the United States of America. We're going to talk about why that's the problem, but more importantly, we're going to talk about what the solution is. But I want everyone to walk away knowing we're not in this position because the assessor. We're in this position because the state of Illinois is not paying their fair share towards our public school education. So please, if you walk away with remembering nothing else, please walk away knowing that this isn't an assessor problem. This isn't a local mayor. This isn't a trustee. This is a state representative and a state senator problem, because the state isn't giving us their fair share, and our state reps and our state senators are the parties responsible for that. So that's the first takeaway. The next thing, which is the new information that I want to share with everyone, is during the last call, numerous people said, why isn't the governor doing something? I've also gotten dozens of emails saying that we should write letters and petitions to JB Pritzker. That is wrong. That's 100% wrong. Now, if you want to do it, I'm not the type that's going to tell you not to do something, because I believe it's better to do something than nothing. But I also believe that it's best to do something that's going to be productive and give us the result we want. And that's my goal and approach. So I want to share this with people because most people are unaware of this. Back in 2019, Governor J.B. Pritzker, shortly after he took office, decided to come up with an initiative called the Fair Tax Amendment. Some of you may remember it, some of you may not remember it. But the Fair Tax Amendment was an attempt to change the personal income tax brackets in the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois is one of only 8 states that has a flat income tax. So everybody in the state of Illinois, for the state of Illinois income tax, pays the same rate of 4.95%. Well, J.B. Pritzker said that's not a good idea because we're not collecting as much revenue as we can to pay for our public schools. So J.B. Pritzker introduced the initiative of the Fair Tax Amendment, and it was on the ballot in 2020. What the Fair Tax Amendment said is that if you make over $250,000, you're going to pay a higher income tax percentage based on the amount you make. And if you make over $1 million, you're going to pay a higher percentage. If you make over $10 million, you're going to make a higher percentage. That's how our federal income tax system works. It's called marginal tax brackets. And J.B. Pritzker said we should do that for the state of Illinois. And oh, by the way, with all that additional revenue that we collect, we're going to take that money and we're going to use it to pay for our public schools, which will then help not have to rely on local property tax dollars. So J.B. Pritzker came up with this idea, and not only did he come up with it and get it onto the ballot, J.B. Pritzker spent $56 million of his personal money to promote moving to what he dubbed a fair tax, to allow state to charge higher taxes on those higher income brackets and lower rates for lower income filers. So J.B. Pritzker said, I want to tax rich people. And oh, by the way, J.B. Pritzker is rich. So he said, I want to tax rich people more. And we're going to take that money and we're going to use it to pay for education. So that way we don't have to rely on property tax dollars as much. But despite the fact that J.B. Pritzker took $56 million of his own money to support this initiative, this individual named Ken Griffin, who was the richest person in Illinois at the time, said, no, we don't want that because I'm going to pay more in taxes. So he took $54 million of his money to fight that initiative. And he ran commercials every day saying, don't support this because it's going to kill small businesses. And then guess what ended up happening? 55% of Illinoisans said, no, I don't want this, even though they were going to benefit. And 45% said yes, but they lost. And it's all because the 55% didn't know what this tax was about because they weren't educated and they just believed what they saw on the commercials. And that prompted for them to vote against their own interest. And we didn't get the relief. So for anybody who says that I need to write a letter or send a petition to J.B. Pritzker so he can become aware of what's going on, not only does J.B. Pritzker know what's going on, he took $56 million of his own money to try and fix this, and us poor people didn't support him. So imagine if you're J.B. Pritzker and you get letters from people saying, hey, you need to fix this. And then he says, not only did I try to, I spent $56 million of my own money and y'all didn't vote for it when you had a chance to. So for the people who say that the governor has a responsibility to fix this, He doesn't. It's not the governor's job to fix this. It's the state rep and it's the state senator. They're the legislators who write law. But even though it wasn't his responsibility, he still said, I'm going to try and fix this. And oh, by the way, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, $56 million of my money. And the people said, no, thank you, JB. We don't want your help. And it's because the people weren't informed. So this is new information. We've never talked about this before. So anybody who says, oh, I've seen this before, they're wrong, because we've never talked about this before. This is the first time that I found this article from WTTW, Window to the World, PBS, and I want for everybody to see it so you know where this information is coming from. I didn't write this article. I found it earlier yesterday, and I wanted to share it. Go through it. Look at the fact that it says that he's trying to get more money to help with our education, trying to get property taxes under control. We had a chance, and 55% of the states said no, likely because they didn't know that they were voting against their own interests. And that's the reason why we can't just run and have the legislators try and change the law, because the same thing's going to happen. We have to educate and mobilize. Educate and mobilize. That's the initiative. We're trying to ensure that we don't have a repeat of 2020. The only way that that happens is enough people have to be educated. The only way that they get educated is they come on and they learn. You can watch this from your house. You can sit down. You can watch it on your backyard. Just please get educated. So I'm going to pause here and I'm going to look in the chat group and I'm going to see. So thank you for the person who said they're going to share with everyone. Thank you. That's what we need. We need for everybody to make this a priority for everybody we know. So that way, 1,000 people come on the call, and then we can invite our state reps and our state senators on and say, hey, take a look at these 1,000 people who are educated and are ready to mobilize. But if they show up and there's 60 people on the call, they're going to say, apparently this isn't important enough. And that's what has to change. Thanks both of you for your work. Thank you. If people watch the playback, will their viewing be recorded? No. Oh, well, so it'll be recorded in so much that it'll show that they have a view, but it's not like they're going to show up on the screen or anything. We didn't fully understand it. We got tricked. You're right. We did get tricked because just like with this initiative, this isn't going to be beneficial for everyone. I don't want to lie to anybody on here and make them think that this is going to be great for everybody in the state. If you live in a community where your tax rate is below 10%, what we're proposing is that your taxes be increased, and the money that comes from that increase goes to every school district throughout the state. That's what the flat property tax initiative is. We're going to go to a 10% flat property tax rate for every community in Illinois: Rockford, Champaign, Bloomington, Urbana, Carbondale, Harvey, Chicago, New Lenox. Every single municipality in the state of Illinois is going to have a flat property tax rate of 10%. That's what it is that we're proposing. Instead of the money going just to your local schools, the money goes to Springfield, and then Springfield sends the money to every school equally throughout the state of Illinois. And by taking this approach, that's going to reduce any community that has a property tax rate above 10% down to 10%, and it's going to ensure that every school district has 100% funding. Now, a lot of people don't know what their property tax rates are. That's a part of this workshop. I want to share with people how you can see what your property tax rate is. So if you don't know what your property tax rate is, and you want to know what your property tax rate is, all you do is go to the website of cookcountypropertyinfo.com if you live in Cook County. If you live in Will County, you go to Will County. If you live in DuPage, so on. But once you go there, you just type in your address. And I like to use Park Forest because that's my hometown. Grew up in the Chinese house of Park Forest. My parents still live there. Shout out to Park Forest. Great community. Think I'm a better person because I grew up there. I also realized that I couldn't afford to live there anymore, so I don't live there anymore. And that's the reality of our situation. So I'm going to use this property at 310 Wildwood. And again, this is a random property. All this information is public. I like to use this property because Mr. Batoy came on the call before the property tax apocalypse happened. And he said, I'm going to go knock on every one of my neighbors' doors and tell them they need to join. Fortunately, we haven't seen Mr. Batoy back unless you're here today. And if so, shout out to you, Mr. Batoy. Thanks for coming back. But Mr. Batoy had a property tax bill in 2022 of $6,347.82. Mr. Batoy now has a tax bill of $11,480.94. This is real life. I didn't know Mr. Batoy before. Apparently, he's my doppelganger because his name is Dario and I'm Mario. But Mr. Batoy's tax bill doubled. The reason why Mr. Batoy's tax bill doubled is because Park Forest has the 4th highest property tax rate in Cook County and the state of Illinois. 24% is the tax rate in Park Forest. 24%. That is 4 times as high as Hinsdale, Illinois, which is 6%. What it is that the Flat Property Tax Initiative is proposing is we're going to take that tax rate of 24% in Park Forest and we're going to go down to 10%. What that would mean is Mr. Batoy's property tax bill would go from $11,000 down to roughly about $4,000, about $4,500. How would you like to have your property tax bill cut in half? Is there anybody who would like to have their tax bill cut in half? I know I would. That's what we're proposing. And how it works is we go, everybody throughout the state is at 10%. All the money comes into a singular pot, and then the money goes to Springfield, and then Springfield sends all of the money to every school district throughout the state. And that's how we solve our current system. If your tax rate is above 10%, you probably like this idea. If your tax rate is below 10%, you probably hate this idea. But the fact is that there are 67% of people whose tax rate is above 10%. So there's way more of us than people that are less than 10%. We just need for all the people above 10% to know this is the problem and that this is the solution and then support it. So hopefully everybody understands that. All right, so I'm going to pause. So that was the message that was given at town hall meetings by state officials to contact your governor. Thank you for that, and I appreciate you posting that, and thank you to the person who posted it. You know who you are, because that's part of the reason why we want to do these workshops. I want to pause here to let everybody know a little bit about my background real quick. So I'm an attorney who has an office in South Holland. I worked for the Cook County Recorder of Deeds office and the Cook County Clerk's office for roughly 5 years. During that 5 years, I was responsible for the community outreach, and I would do the outreach sessions in partnership a lot of times with the assessor's office and the Cook County Board of Review's office. So for probably over 1,000 hours of my life, I heard the presentation of the assessor's office and the Board of Review. In addition to being an attorney and working for government, I also interned with the Metropolitan Planning Council back in 2006, and we worked with an organization called A+ Illinois, which was working to solve this problem back in 2006. They partnered with State Senator Meeks, the pastor of Salem, who was a senator at the time, who was committed to solving this issue. But they never did. They got disbanded. But I learned about it back in 2006, and I've been studying it ever since. Because of the fact that I don't work for government, I can tell you the real deal. And I'm going to tell you the real deal because, like I said, I want to solve this even more than you do because my taxes are high as well. And I also understand that the only way we solve a lot of our issues with crime and poverty in general is that all of our education systems need to be on a level playing field. Hinsdale schools get 200% to their budget. Rich Township gets 70% to their budget. The reason why the the high school graduation rate is lower at Rich Township is because they're not getting as much money. I don't care what anybody says about per pupil spending and all that stuff. Give Rich Township the same amount of money you're giving Hinsdale, and let's see what the graduation rates look like after a decade. So because of that, I'm going to tell you it real. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm not going to lie to anybody because I'm not trying to run for office. I'll never run for office because I've worked for somebody who did, and I saw how tumultuous of a life that is. Rest in peace to Karen Yarbrough. She was a phenomenal legislator, a phenomenal clerk, a phenomenal recorder of deeds, but life as an elected official is not sweet, and I don't want to live that life myself. So I'm going to tell it exactly as I've learned it, and I want everybody to see it in real time. So thank you for that, and I understand anybody who's been told, hey, you need to do this. All right, so the next thing that we got, and all right, please let everyone know again that this is not only for Cook County, but all of Illinois. Thank you for that reminder. This solution is for the whole state of Illinois. A lot of times we like to think that Cook County is kind of the end all be all of Illinois. It's not. Rockford is one of the poorest counties in all of the state of Illinois, but their tax rate is right now about 15%. Rockford is going to see their tax rate get reduced down to 10%, and they're going to see their schools now get 100% funded. The Rockford school system performs the worst out of almost all of the school systems, and it's because they're only being funded at a rate of 70%. This is not a problem that's unique to just the south suburbs. East St. Louis is experiencing this. Rockford is experiencing this. Anywhere that poor people are, we're paying more in property taxes percentage-wise, and we're getting less to our public schools. And that's because 66% of the public school funding comes from the local community. So if you have a poor community and the majority of their schools are funded by that poor community, you're going to have poor schools. If you have a wealthy community and the majority of money comes from the community, you're going to have wealthy schools. That's what our public school funding formula currently does. We have to change that. Will this vote come up again in future elections? So the answer is no. This won't come up as a referendum question. This will come up as a bill that's sponsored by a state representative and a state senator. And I want to shout out Trustee Matz because she was being very humble in what it is that she does. Trustee Matz is essentially our lobbyist for this special interest group. And she gets me in front of the state representatives and state senators to try and convince them to support this. She succeeded in getting us in front of a state senator who's going to remain nameless because I want for that individual to be able to come out and announce to everyone that they're sponsoring this bill. But that state senator has agreed to sponsor the legislation. So what's going to happen from there is that the state senator and the state rep are then going to have to convince at least 50% of their colleagues to support this legislation. What we can do is support them in that initiative by having 10,000 people on this call. So the next time that we invite the state rep and the state senator to join us, they'll see 10,000 people and not just 47. So for everybody who says, what can I do to help with this initiative? You got to bring more people with you. And I apologize. I just got a message that said my internet connection is unstable. If anything I said didn't come through clearly, please just go ahead and post it and then I'll do it. All right. How do we trust that though? Because historically we never get the equal but pay the bigger share. That's a great question. And the answer is that right now we know we're not getting equal. So whether we trust a solution or not, if we don't do anything, we know we're getting screwed. So we've got two choices. Either we can fight for something and hope that what we fight for and get passed is going to help us, or we can just throw up our hands and do nothing and keep seeing our property tax bills go from $6,000 to $11,000. I want everybody to understand that every 3 years we get reassessed. So if you can't survive what's going on now, remember, in 2026, we're going to get reassessed again. And the values are going to go up again. If you can't afford an $11,000 property tax bill now, if that value goes up by another $60,000, you're now going to be dealing with an $18,000 bill. So for everybody who says, how do we trust them? I'm being real. We have to trust them in so much where we know our current system doesn't work. So we have to do something. And that's what it is that, again, if everybody goes to 10%, anybody who's above 10% right now gets a tax break. Now, whether that money gets to our school districts the way that we hope and we need, that's something that we are trusting. But even if the money goes at the same rate that it does right now, if you got a 50% reduction to your tax bill and your schools were still funded at the same rate, wouldn't that still be a win? Wouldn't we still have came out better? If we cut your tax bill and your schools are still only funded at 70%, at least you aren't contributing $11,000 anymore. You're now only contributing $5,500. Your schools might still be funded at 70%, but at least you're saving money. So if we can get the tax rate reduced to 10%, that alone is going to be a win. My hope is that they're going to do the right thing and send the money to the schools at a rate of 100%. But even if they don't, we still win because our taxes are lower. And that's something, in my opinion. Is it 10% of the purchase price of our property, 10% of assessed value? What is the 10% of what? Thank you for asking that question. So it's a little bit complicated, and I'm going to try and give everyone the Cliff Note version. So it's not 10% of any of those numbers. It's 10% of our equalized assessed value. And this is why it's so important that we do these calls, because property taxes are hard. I'm an attorney. I have my law license. I've practiced for 10 years, and it's still hard for me. So I can only imagine people who didn't go through all of that. And I'm going to let these two people in. So thank you, everybody who's coming. Let everybody in. So really quickly, how your property taxes are calculated is that the assessor puts a value on your property. In this case, the assessor said that Dario Batoy's property at 310 Wildwood has a market value of $190,000. In Cook County, we get an assessed value, which is based on 10% of the market value. So Dario Batoy's assessed value, we're just going to round this up, is $19,000. That's 10% of his market value. Now, because every county throughout the state is assessed at a rate of 33%, 33 1/3, instead of Cook County, which is 10%, we're the only county at 10%. The Illinois Department of Revenue has to equalize our assessments. We can't be the only one being assessed at 10% because that would be unfair to the rest of the state. So the Illinois Department of Revenue comes up with what the equalizer is. That equalizer changes every single year. And you can find out what it is. Just type in, what is the Cook County multiplier, which is also called the equalizer. So for 2023, the multiplier is 3.0163. That's the multiplier for 2023. But every year it changes. And you can go back and look at all of the multipliers dating back to 2004. Every year it's a different number. That number is based on the previous year's property sales. And again, I apologize that this is complex, but I want to answer the question so that everybody understands how our tax bill is calculated. So the multiplier for this year was 3.0163. So then what you do is you multiply the multiplier by the assessed value. And you can do this yourself. So just pull up a calculator. Dario's assessed value is $19,000. So we take that number and I'm going to switch over. No, I'm going to leave it here so you can see the numbers. 19,000 times 3.0163. Dario's equalized assessed value is $57,309.70. That's the number that we're using to calculate Dario's property tax bill. So we know the equalized assessed value. Essentially, that's how much Dario's property is worth, $57,309.70. The next step is we're going to multiply that by the tax rate. The current tax rate for Dario is this 24.269%. And because it's a percentage, we have to put the decimal point first. So I'm going to hit times 0.24269. So Dario's tax bill would be $13,908.49 if Dario doesn't qualify for any exemptions. Hopefully everybody's with me and understands how I got to that number. We take the estimated property value and we do a 10% assessment level, 19,000. We multiply the 19,000 by the multiplier, which is 3.0163 for 2023. That gives us the assessed value, equalized assessed value. Then we multiply the equalized assessed value by the tax rate. The current tax rate for where Dario lives in Park Forest is 24.269%. So we multiply it by that number, and that gives us what the total tax bill is before exemptions, $13,908.49. Well, now we subtract the exemption. The exemption for the homeowner's exemption is whatever the tax rate is. We're going to just move the decimal point 2 places to the left. I'm sorry, 2 places to the right. So that means that the homeowner's exemption is worth $2,426.90. So we subtract that, $2,426.90, and that gives us Dario's property tax bill of $11,480.94. That's how your property tax bill is calculated. Now, to the person who asked the question, what is the 10% of? The tax rate's going to be 10%. So we're now going to do the math if Dario's tax rate would have been 10%. So you can see what the difference is. So we're going to do the same equation, but just substitute 10% instead of 24.26. So we take 19,000. We multiply that by 3.0163. That gives us the equalized assessed value of $57,309.70. We now multiply that amount by the 10%, 0.10, and that gives us a new property tax bill of $5,730.97 before Dario's exemption. His homeowner's exemption is now going to be worth $1,000 because it's a lower tax rate. So we subtract $1,000, and Dario's new property tax bill is $4,730.97. We took Dario's bill from $11,480 down to $4,700. That's the power of what we're proposing. We're talking about cutting people's tax bills from $11,480 to $4,700. That's the magnitude of what this would accomplish. And on top of it, now Dario's high schools of Rich Township, which currently are funded at just 70%, are going to be funded at a rate of 100%. That's the power of what we're proposing. If you live in Park Forest, this is great for you. If you live in Hinsdale, it's not as great for you. We have to be educated, because if our legislators propose this, the legislators in Hinsdale are going to say, no, don't support this. And they're going to try and kill it the same way Ken Griffin did. And oh, I forgot to mention, Ken Griffin doesn't live in Illinois anymore. He moved to Florida. So he spent $54 million to kill something that was going to help Illinoisans. And then he said, excellent, my other people don't have to worry about paying higher taxes. And oh, by the way, I'm bouncing to Florida and I'm gonna move into the same community with Jeff Bezos. That's what happened. We can't let that happen again. We have to get educated. So that answers the question about the 10%. Everyone needs to educate themselves and everyone needs to vote, despite 98% of precincts reporting. As of 9 a.m., results show 54%. So you're right. Everyone does need to educate themselves, but most people don't know where to go to look for this. And that's the reason why we do these. For people who aren't familiar and haven't spent 10,000 hours or more studying this, we want to spoon feed it to you. We want to give it to you on a platter. We just need you to show up. And that's what we're asking. Help us get more people to get educated. Why is Hinsdale's tax so low? How did we get that in Madison and Park Forest? Great question. And the answer is the reason why Hinsdale's is so low is because Hinsdale is rich. Because Hinsdale is rich, you only need to take a small percentage of the pie in order to pay your schools. And this is why we want everybody to come to the workshops, because just like you have this question, most people are going to have this question. So earlier today or yesterday, I got an email from the mother of someone I went to high school with. And the mother sent me this email. And I want for everybody to see this because this is what most people are grappling with. So I've redacted that person's information. My address is in Park Forest. I do not understand why the taxes jumped so much, especially since the total tax compared to previous year only jumped around $300. Yet after my exemptions, which appear a lot lower than last year, my bill more than tripled. I already went to Rich Township Assessor and the Markham Courthouse office and was advised that the only thing I can do is appeal when the window opens. I researched that two houses right next to me sold last year, one for $193,000, the other for $186,000. I do not know what taxes other homes in the area pay, but if you can guide me to the name of the website, I'll do the research. Their friend, one of my clients, suggested I call you. Unfortunately, it was away when we did the workshop. Went to Rich East with my son. I sure did. And that's where we stand. So the property went from having a tax bill of $1,600 to $5,800. This is for a senior. How can a senior afford an increase from $1,600 to $5,800 in 1 year? Well, I went and found a property in Hinsdale, and the property's value is $320,000. This senior's property is $140,000. So we got $320,000 in Hinsdale, $140,000 in Park Forest. The rate in Park Forest is 24%. The rate in Hinsdale, I hope everybody can see it, is 6.863%. The senior who qualifies for 2 exemptions in Park Forest pays $5,800. This non-senior in Hinsdale that has a house worth $320,000, more than double the senior, pays a tax bill of $5,900. They pay the same tax bill with a house that's worth twice as much, and they only qualify for 1 exemption. And it's because they're rich. They are rich. In Hinsdale, and I'm going to bring this up so everybody can see it. And again, everybody can have access to this information. I don't have a special computer or internet. The median household income in Park Forest is $58,907. And that's based on the 2022 census data. So anybody can go search what the median household income is. But it doesn't even matter what the median household income is. What matters is what's the median property value, because our property taxes are based on the value of the home. The median property value in Park Forest is 95 grand. So there's only a little bit of money in Park Forest. Now let's take a look and see what the median household income is in Hinsdale. The median household income in Hinsdale is $250,000. The average Hinsdalean is bringing in $250,000 every year. But again, that number doesn't matter as much as what's the value of their property. The value of their property is $962,000. The median property value is $1 million. So you only need to take 6% of $1 million home to come up with enough money to pay for the schools. Whereas in Park Forest, you need to take 25% to come up with enough money to come up with even 70% of what the schools receive. That's why Hinsdale is so low, because right now, the local community pays for the bulk of our public schools. If it's a rich community, you don't need to take as large of a percentage because they have way more money. If it's a poor community, you got to take way more in order to try and pay for the schools. That's why we shouldn't be paying for our schools at a local level. We need to pay for it at the state level. Let all of the money go into one pot and let the state pay for all of the schools equally. That's how it works in Vermont. And Vermont ranks number 4 in the United States in terms of quality of education. That's what we need to transition to. And they're doing it in other states. Michigan has a similar approach. So we know that it works. All right. Is the fight for a flat tax rate for the long haul or for a limited time? So great question. And it's for the long haul. Trustee Cassandra Matz and myself have been doing these flat tax calls for 4.5 years. I see our Rich Township Assessor, Sam Brown, on the call. Thank you for joining in. He's been joining for about 3-4 years. This is for the long haul. I like to tell people that we're approaching this like the Mothers Against Drunk Driving, but I've actually changed it. We're approaching this like the civil rights movement, because in my opinion, this is our civil rights movement. And the same way that people were fighting for the civil rights movement when they were 20, and some of those same people were fighting for it, John Lewis and all of these great names we know, they were fighting for it when they died in their 80s. That's the same approach that I'm taking. So I'm in it for the long haul. I don't care if I'm 90 years old, as long as I can talk. And if this hasn't been solved, I'm still going to be doing flat tax calls, because our communities deserve to have tax rates that are 10%. Our communities deserve to have schools that are funded at a rate of 100%. The only way we get there is we have to demand it. Nobody's coming to save us. We got to save us. So this is for the long haul for myself, and I hope that everybody else joins us. And if you do, and it won't take forever. But if you don't, I'm still going to be fighting. And because I believe this is the right thing to do, I'm going to support this cause to the day I die. Taxes are based on how much the area needs to run government, which is also schools. Currently, there are a lot of businesses that have left, and we're paying the most tax in Madison Park Forest. So thank you for that comment, Scott, but that's wrong. If you live in Olympia Fields, 73% of your property tax bill goes to the funding of schools. So it's not a case where we're talking about the local government being the majority line item on your bill. It's the schools. Furthermore, there are businesses in every community. There's a Taco Bell in Park Forest, and there's a Taco Bell in Glenview. The Taco Bell in Park Forest has a tax bill of $248,000 because the tax rate is so high. The Taco Bell in Glenview has a tax bill of $43,000 because the tax rate is so low. Both businesses they're both slinging tacos. It's not like the one in Park Forest is slinging diamonds and they should pay more. They're both slinging tacos. But because the tax rate is so much higher in Park Forest, they're now paying a higher tax bill. If you have a choice as to whether or not you open a Taco Bell in Park Forest or Glenview, which one are you going to choose? The answer is Glenview. That's why businesses keep leaving Park Forest and Matson. It's because the state isn't paying their fair share. It's not because the local governments. That's a myth. And we have to stop perpetuating these myths because they're distractions from what the real problem is. That's why we need people to come on the calls so we can dispel the myths and then educate and mobilize. Educate and mobilize. Please post meeting ID and passcode on websites so that people can find it without searching for it. So thank you, Only One. We appreciate that. Go to the YouTube page. Also, you can go to our Facebook page. It's posted there. However, my ask is that please share it with everybody so they don't have to search for it. I want to stress to everybody, I'm not a savior. I'm not a messiah. I don't pretend to be. I watched Malcolm X this past weekend, and it was so inspirational to me. But it also reminded me the danger of one person leading a movement. Because once Malcolm was assassinated, the movement kind of fell apart. We can't afford that. I'm not going to live forever. This is a movement for us. So instead of trying to say, hey, can you guys do this? My ask is, whatever your idea is, help us. Help us with this. Please share the information with everybody you know. One of the things that I'm going to start doing, that I'm asking that I'm not going to ask anybody to do anything I'm not doing, is have a 10 neighbor knock campaign. I'm going to walk to 10 of my neighbors over the next 2 weeks, knock on their door, and ask them to join me for the 3rd week of this workshop. If you do so and they show up, then hopefully we'll help our movement. I'm going to commit to 10. If you commit to 10 and everybody on this call commits to 10, ideally we'll have 500 people next time. But we have to do this together. So if you think that it's a good idea to post it on the website, I'm asking, please direct people to go to the Facebook page of Saving the Southland. I'm going to show you what that looks like so that people can get access to it. You don't have to be on Facebook to go and look at information on Facebook. So for all those people who say, oh, it's elderly people and they're not on Facebook, help them. Help them as young people, but go to Facebook and then type in Saving the Southland. And it looks just like this. God dang it. All right, so I'm gonna go back. Just type in Saving the Southland, and it says nonprofit organization. And up pops the tab, and there it is, right there, front and center. Anybody can see it, anybody can share it, but you can screenshot it and you can send it to people as a text message. Trustee Matt sends out hundreds of text messages every day saying, y'all, tonight's the call, please jump on. We have to get together on this. Just like the civil rights movement, where they were showing up every week and saying, okay, somebody's got to sell these bean pies, somebody's got to sell cakes. We got to get together and do this bus boycott. That's where we're at. This is our civil rights movement. So we have to work collectively together. The information is also on the playback. What department or entity controls the tax rates in the different villages? It's not a case of departments controlling tax rates. That's not how it works. Every taxing body submits a levy, and it's based on how much money they need to run their agency. So the mosquito abatement, if you've ever looked at your tax bill, you've seen the mosquito abatement. They need money to keep mosquitoes out of our yards. They then submit a budget, which then translates to their levy, and all of those levies together creates the tax rate. So it's not like there's somebody sitting in the ivory tower saying, I'm going to make the tax rate in Park Forest 24%. It doesn't work like that. All of the different taxing bodies need money to run government. And then whatever their taxing levy is, it all gets added together by the Cook County Clerk's office, and they produce the tax rate. But it's sometimes 17 different taxing agencies. So it's lots of different people. And each of those oftentimes has a board. So your library has a board of trustees. They vote on a budget, and then the budget gets submitted, and that becomes the levy. I'm a resident of Country Club Hills. My property taxes went from $780 to roughly $5,000. Whoa, I am so sorry. You need help and you want help, and how? Again, I wish that I had a magic wand. If I did, I would fix so much stuff in this world. This being one of them. I don't have a magic wand. I'm sorry. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that I can fix your problem, because I can't. I can't fix it. That's why we're doing these calls, because I want to fix it, but we have to get enough people to get educated and mobilized. So please come back and we're going to tell your story, how we got a person whose tax bill went from $780 to $5,000. Now, what I will say, and I'm going to post my email address for everyone. You can send me an email with your address. I don't want you sharing it on here. It's Mario with Lumarti at outlook.com. It's in the chat. Everyone's welcome. You can send me an email with the address and I can check to see maybe you didn't get all your exemptions. And that is something that we can help with. But if it's a case where you got all your exemptions and your assessed value just went up by that much, there's nothing that I'm going to be able to do. And I'm sorry. But I don't want for that kind of story to keep happening, which is why we got to get more people to get educated and mobilized. These are the real life stories that are happening. Okay, so, and again, I want to say thank you to everybody because this is the kind of engagement that we have to have. The state rep announced that he is sponsoring the bill. It's not a state rep, it's a state senator. And if he announced, now, if he or she announced it, that's their prerogative. But what I will say is that it's going to still be a while. And how I know is because I'm the one who's writing it. So I got work to do and I haven't written it yet. So it's not coming yet because I still have to write it. But I will tell everyone that it's going to be something that I'm committing to finishing. But right now, the legislator's not in session. So because they're not in session, we can't even submit it. So there's time. Attorney Reed and Trustee Mass, thank you very much. Your time and support. We'll continue to share. We'll obtain 10,000 signatures, equivalent to having 10,000 people on the call. In my opinion, no. Having 10,000 signatures is not the equivalency of 10,000 people on the call. And I'll tell you why that is. I used to work for the Honorable Karen A. Yarbrough. Karen Yarbrough had 3 executive administrative assistants who were responsible for screening all of the mail and emails that came in. It didn't matter if 10,000 of the same letter came in, the executive administrators were the ones who saw it, and they would just report to Karen Yarbrough, hey, 10,000 people don't like this. Again, I want to stress to you, J.B. Pritzker knows this is bad. J.B. Pritzker spent $56 million of his own money to fix it, and we didn't support him. So this isn't a problem that J.B. Pritzker created. This is the problem of 55% of Illinoisans voting against their own interests because they weren't educated. Nothing is a substitute for the voters being educated. That's what this boils down to. We have to take responsibility for our situation. We can't microwave it. We can't fast track it. Our democratic republic was created, and it said that the voters have the power. If the voters aren't educated, we're going to keep making the same mistakes over again. We have to get educated. Then we mobilize. Thanks for the education. Thank you for attending. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We all need to be committed to getting as many people. I agree. Educate and mobilize. That's the goal. What do we see as a major pushback by current legislators on this plan? What I see is that they're going to say only 50 people cared enough to get educated, so why should we change anything? If 5,000 people aren't showing up to say, I dislike this system, why are they going to think that people dislike it? There's an old saying that says that you promote what you permit. That's what's been happening. We have been promoting this broken public school funding formula because we've been permitting it. We haven't done anything. This past March, we had a primary election. Most state senators were on the ballot. The turnout rates for the South suburbs averaged 17%. Only 17% of the electorate cared enough to go to the ballot box and vote for the people who were responsible for this. So before we want to point the finger at those elected officials, we got to look in the mirror and say, why is only 17% of the highest property taxes in the country voting for the people who are responsible for that? I'll tell you why, because we're not informed. Most people think it's the assessor that's the problem. Most people think it's their mayor that's the problem. Most people think it's their trustees and mismanagement, or it's the fact that their school board superintendent makes $300,000. No, it's because the state's only giving 24% to our public schools, but we're not educated, and only 50 people are getting educated tonight. We got to change it. It's on us. We have to save us. All right. So, and to answer the question, what I see as a current major pushback to the current legislature is the fact that only 50 people care enough about this to do something. So if it only 50 people care, obviously there's nothing wrong with the current system. That's what has to change. How will the 10% flat tax affect my municipality's money? Great question. It's going to increase the amount of money that goes to your municipality. Because right now, the reason why our municipalities are only able to levy a little portion is because there's not enough money to go around. The schools are getting the bulk of our tax bill. If we have the state pay for 90% of the schools, now our local communities will have a greater amount flowing to them. So because of the fact that less money is going to the public schools from each of the communities, our local communities can now get more. And that's what's happening in Oak Brook. Somebody reached out and said, why does Oak Brook not pay any property taxes? That's not true. Oak Brook does pay property taxes, but none of the money that the property owners pay goes to Oak Brook. And that's because Oak Brook Mall and the other businesses generate enough revenue to pay all of the government municipal taxes for Oak Brook. So people in Oak Brook do pay property taxes, but none of that money from the property owners, the residential homeowners, goes to paying for the government. And that's because there's enough money being generated just in sales tax revenue and property tax revenue, which is coming from the commerce, the businesses. That's what we're proposing. What we're doing is we're saying it in reverse. We want the money that goes to the schools now to come from the state, which means more money can flow to our local communities, which means that businesses can come back to our communities. And it's because there'll be more money in the pockets of the homeowners to go and support the businesses. If Dario Batoy gets a tax reduction of $7,000, what do you think he's going to do with the $7,000? Well, he's probably going to go spend it at the local grocery store, the local steakhouse, the local sit-down restaurant, which can now flourish because everybody in Park Forest got a raise of $7,000. We are revitalizing our communities. And that's what the bill is going to be structured around. We're talking about community revitalization and economic and mandatory minimums. So it's going to be the CREAM Act. That's what we're talking about, the CREAM Act. And I'm working on it. I'm writing it, but I got some work to do. Is there contact information for myself and Cassandra that we want to share here? Absolutely. So that email address of Mario with Lumarti at outlook.com that I posted is the contact. Feel free to email. I've made copies of the flyer and had it distributed to my ward's town hall meeting, also distributed to my church members. As I meet people, I text it to them. They don't always show up for now, but don't give up. You're right. That's the exact approach we're taking. And I'll tell everyone, we are also going to be doing an in-person workshop on the last Wednesday of this month and Trustee Matt's, it's Victory Apostolic, right? And Matson. So many churches, I get them confused. I believe it's Victory Apostolic. It's going to be in person the last Wednesday of this month at 7 p.m. We're going to post that on the Facebook page, and then we're going to talk about it at the next flat tax workshop on the third week. But for anybody who wants to come in person, that's a perfect time. Also, another way you can support the movement is go to your mayor, go to your trustees and say, we need to have a town hall in our community about this. And we'll come. We'll show up and we'll do it in person. We'll answer all the questions. We'll give out all the information. We'll bring the projector, the laptop. We got all our own stuff. But we have to, again, we got to save us. So we have to get this out to our neighbors in as creative of a way as possible. While we continue this fight for the Fair Tax Initiative, is it beneficial for the Southland and combined villages and share resources to also offset these increases? That's a great question. And I can tell you again from personal experience that if we consolidate all of our villages, it's still not going to change the fact that the schools have to educate the same number of students. Consolidation isn't going to change the fact that we need money to educate our kids. And let me show everybody this real quick, because I think it's a case where, and I didn't get a chance to cover this because the questions have been great. Thank everyone for these questions, because this is what we want. We want engaged education based on the questions you have. Everybody needs to go to IllinoisReportCard.com. That's a website that everybody who's concerned about this needs to be familiar with. Go to IllinoisReportCard.com and type in your high school district. I graduated from Rich East, class of 99, greatest class ever. Shout out to all of my colleagues and classmates. Rich Township has a budget. Every single year, every school district gets a budget. Rich Township's budget for 1 year to educate their students adequately is $54 million. $54 million. That's a ton of money. It's also the amount of money that Ken Griffin spent to kill the Fair Tax Amendment. That tells you how rich this man is. Instead of giving that money to help Rich Township, he said, I'm going to run commercials to kill a bill that will help Rich Township. That's how insanely rich he is. Well, Rich Township needs $54 million. Whether Park Forest, Matson, Chicago Heights, Country Club Hills, Richmond Park, whether they're all one community or they're all 5 different communities, Rich Township High School still needs $54 million to fund Rich Township High School. Well, let's take a look and see how much money that the state of Illinois gave to Rich Township. You go to district finances, district environment, district finances, and then click on revenue percentages. When you click on revenue percentages, it shows you how much the state gave. The state gave a whopping the state gave a paltry 17.9%. They didn't even give the average of 24%. They said, here's 17% towards your 54 million. And then the local community had to pay 75%. Whether Richmond Park was combined with Park Forest, Matson, Chicago Heights, and Country Club Hills or not, they still had to come up with 75% for the schools. And because in Olympia Fields, which sends their kids to Rich Township High School, 73% of their tax bill went to the schools. Consolidating Olympia Fields with Chicago Heights isn't going to change the fact that 73% of the bill is still going to have to go to the schools. This is why the education is so important. Because if somebody comes along and says, well, Olympia Fields just needs to merge with Chicago Heights and Park Forest, and that's going to solve the problem in the intermediary, it's not. And all it's going to do is distract you and think, okay, we're going to get assistance. How do I know that? Because remember, people were distracted in the 90s and the early 2000s by the idea that the lottery was going to solve our problem. Does everybody remember that? When Blagojevich was trying to convince us that if we privatize the lottery, it's going to fix education. Does anybody remember that? I know I do. Well, take a look. How much does the lottery generate? Illinois Lottery Education Funding. Well, if I tell you how much the lottery generates, go to IllinoisLottery.com, and they are required to tell us because it's our tax money that's also running the lottery. The Illinois Lottery generated $882 million. That's an incredible amount of money if you are just regular people like us. But if you need this money to pay for education, that's nothing. How do I know that? Because, oh, by the way, I went and I looked up how much money does the state need to run education. It's in our state budget. And again, I've done this research because I care about it. I post this research on Saving the Southland Facebook page. According to the state budget for 2025, the state needs $25.513 billion for education. This is the amount that the lottery makes up. Does everybody see this tiny little orange sliver? That's how much the lottery is giving, 882 million. This is how much we need, and that's just to be adequate. That's so that Rich Township can get 82% funding. We need more money, and it's not coming from the lottery. It's not coming from us consolidating all of our poorer communities together. Because even when you put Chicago Heights, Olympia Fields, Park Forest, and Matson together, we still only have a little bit of money. We don't have enough money. On the third workshop, on the third week, I'm sorry, not the third workshop, but on the third Wednesday, I'm going to show everyone the disparity in money. But if you don't want to wait that long, go to Saving the Southland and look at this post. This is the post which I did. And again, at Sunday morning at 3 a.m., while everybody else is sleeping, I'm up researching this stuff because that's how passionate I am about it. Schaumburg, Elk Grove Village, Des Plaines, and Arlington Heights generate $1.2 billion in property tax revenue between just those four communities. 1.2 billion. All of the south suburbs together combined only generate $1.1 billion. So for those people who say, let's just merge all of our powers together like Captain Planet, we're just going to get 1.1 billion still. While four communities in the northern suburbs generate 1.2 billion from just four. There's 30 some odd communities in the south suburbs. We got Lansing, we got Homewood, we got Hazelcrest. And with all of our money combined, we still only equal 1.17. This isn't an issue where the municipalities are taking our money and running away with it. Maybe some of them are. For those who are familiar with Dalton and what's going on there, you got a good argument. I'm not going to fight you on it. But it's not the case in Homewood. It's not the case in Olympia Fields. We just don't have enough money. That's all to it. All right, so I'm going to answer the last questions that we have because I have a 15-year young daughter at home that's needing some food that I got to get to. But I want to thank everybody for joining the call. So the taxes are going up. Everybody who's posting that your taxes are going from $5,700 to $11,000, trust me, I know it better than most people. I've been doing videos about this since 2006. You can go to my Facebook page, Mario A. Reed, and type in taxes, and it'll bring up all the videos dating back to 06, well, it was 09, because that's when I joined. I've been talking about this for over a decade. I know that's why we do these calls. The state rep said it's an open meeting. I know that rep is a liar. I can't speak on that rep, but I wouldn't be shocked if they are. There is power in numbers. You're right. But 50 people is not powerful. We got to drive that number up to 5,000 to 50,000. We got work to do. I heard Naperville pays less than 1% property tax. That's not true. There's no municipality in Illinois that's less than 1%. You can find out that number. You don't have to, again, we got to stop listening to people. That's why I keep showing everything. Don't take my word for it. Go look yourself. I'm just showing you where to go and look. We have to stop listening to people and we got to get educated. If somebody says they're paying less than 1%, say to them, show it to me, prove it to me. Everything that I'm going to tell you, I'm showing you. That's why I want for everybody to come on a call. Don't listen to me. Look at the numbers. Don't believe me when I say that Hinsdale has a median property value of $962,000. Go to the census data. Look at it for yourself. We got to stop listening to people. We got to get educated. My goal is to show you where you can find the information for yourself. Naperville's not less than 1%. They're not that rich. They're not even the richest in the state. We have to save ourselves. You're right. Interesting, I believe the Property Tax Appeal Board of Review is at Tinley Park Convention Center on the same day at 6 p.m. on August 28th. I'll attend your meeting. So thank you. What I'll tell you is that you can appeal. Please do an appeal, but know that doing an appeal is not going to turn your $11,000 tax bill into $4,700. It's just not. So There's nothing wrong with appealing. If you think that your property is overassessed, that system is in place for that reason. But remember, most of our properties aren't overassessed. It's the tax rate that's too high. So you're going to appeal, you're going to lose, and we're going to be right in the same position. We have to change the tax funding formula for our public school. Insane is correct. Yes, you remember the lottery proposal. I'm with you. I remember it well. Consolidations of school districts would save money in that you would not pay for duplication of school district personnel. For instance, pay one superintendent. So thank you, CJMEA, for stating that. But again, I disagree, and I lived it. So I worked for the Recorder of Deeds office. Commissioner John Fritchie said we should consolidate the Recorder of Deeds office with the clerk's office, and it's going to save all this money. Wrong. It doesn't work that way because the services now have to go into overdrive because we put strain on people. We have to lay people off. Even if we save the salary. So let's say that the superintendents all make $300,000 and we've got 4 superintendents. Well, now we just saved $1.2 million. All right, we think we saved $1.2 million, right? That's what we're suggesting. Wrong. We didn't save $1.2 million. All we did is we just shifted $1.2 million to go to the deficit that we already have of $10 million. And now we're asking for one superintendent to be responsible for 6,000 kids when there were 4 being responsible for 6,000, 1,500 apiece. It doesn't work that way. I know we like to lie to ourselves and suggest that it does, but if we're already short $10 million and we save $1.2 million because we just fired 3 people, we didn't create any new money. So yes, we might not have it going to paying 4 people, but we're still short $10 million. When you think of it like when you have a mortgage, if I only make $1,000 a month and my mortgage is $2,000, if I don't pay my cable bill and now I got an extra $180, am I going to be able to pay my mortgage? No, because it's not enough money. This isn't an issue where we're overpaying multiple administrators, and if we just don't pay them, we're going to get all this new money. No, it's still the same money. It's just now we're changing where it goes to. We pay those educators as a part of the $44 million. I'm sorry, those administrators. Some people would say that they're not educators. I'm not here for that. We pay those administrators already. That money's already there. The $44 million includes their salaries. If we don't pay them, now we might have a little bit more money to pay for books or to pay for after-school programs, but we're still $10 million short. We did not create any new money. So I respectfully disagree. That's a myth, and the numbers bear it out. This is why we have to get educated, because we didn't create any new money. How does the state of Illinois get away with only funding the South Suburban schools 17%? Because the South Suburban residents go along with it. We promote what we permit. Only 50 people decided to come out and learn about it. That's why they get away with it. I did an appeal and was denied. It's because your property's not overassessed. Your property's underassessed. The assessor's not the problem. The funding formula is the problem. It's on Naperville's homepage, 0.643% lowest in 50 years. I'm guessing they mean 6.4%. You're right. And that's why we have to go and get the data. Because if we would have just ran with that Naperville's less than 1%, now we got 50 people going and saying Naperville's less than 1%, and that's inaccurate. We have to actually do the research and the education. All right, I'm actually here in Peoria was speaking. A few heavies about you, and well, thank you to all the people who are doing it. For those people who say, what can I do? Your takeaway for this session is to go knock on 10 doors and invite them to this meeting. That's what you can do. Invite them to the meeting on the 3rd. Thank you, everybody. I got to go feed a 15-year-old. I want to thank everybody who came. Please, please, please bring 10 of your closest friends and neighbors next time. If you want to come to the in-person, it's at Victory Apostolic. We'll have the exact address and information. This information will be on YouTube. We hope to see everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we'll see you on the 3rd Wednesday. Have a great one all and take care.